everyone, and welcome to today's episode. So today what I'm going to be doing is going through the first chapter of The Art of War and try to identify some of the cognitive processes that are explained within the first chapter. When I like to identify cognitive processes within reading, I usually like to read something that I consider to be from that is created through introverted intuition. Sun Tzu himself was known as a sage, and I don't want to go into really quickly what I think of the sage archetype, because I really do think that almost all personality types can become the sage at some point in their life. Becoming the sage is the ability to look at a situation from all perspectives, and I do believe that anyone who puts enough effort into a certain area of their life can become somebody who can do this. And I want to just read two definitions of sage, the sage personality, or sage archetype, however you want to look at it. So the sage archetype revolves around knowledge and truth. For the sage, the key of success is collecting information and relentlessly pursuing the truth. This particular archetype believes that gathering reliable, factual information and sharing it with others, we can make the world a better place. That's one. The sage brand personality is constantly seeking the truth. They tend to be perfectionists, don't settle for anything but what is right and true. They thrive on knowledge and being in the know, and they enjoy sharing their findings with others to help benefit everyone. Now, to me, when I talk about excellence later on, these are the types of things that I am thinking about to achieve a level of excellence. This type of personality. Now, I don't think that this is all about cognition. I think that a lot of this is virtues that are picked up, that are instilled on somebody that makes them want to use cognition in this way. So that's why when I get into archetypes, I can use almost any archetype to describe any personality type, because a lot of it is the drive based on how they are actually conceptualizing their purpose in a way, or their own meaning in life. So if you would like to become a sage, then you need to add meaning in your life, which creates meaning within other people's lives. Now, when you read a book like The Art of War, you can understand that that's what Sun Tzu was doing. He was instilling meaning into the future of his country at the time. There's still a lot of debate about the facts of when Sun Tzu was alive and what was happening, what he wrote and things. But generally, the idea is that he created a system that can be used, hope in his mind, through the end of time to move through through any type of battle that a country would have to move through. So I'm going to read through the book. This has been edited. A lot of these, it starts conceptually, and each conceptual point has a breakdown of practical uses that this is used in war. And what I'm going to try to do is try to identify the purpose of thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuiting in this. I can really start with intuiting because it is the introverted intuition that allows somebody to conceptualize with this much detail the movements of war without actually having to talk about a specific war that is happening. And that's what Sun Tzu did. And then as his concepts were used, he was used practically. There have been ways to identify how to introduce his concepts. So when I get to a point that kind of brings up a point of cognition and sensing, thinking, feeling, and intuiting, I'll bring those up. And so the first chapter is estimates. It's also known as, so there's actually, it could be reckoning, plans, calculations, or preliminary calculations. Every time it's been edited, it's been used as a different word, but generally it's the same thing as excellence. You have to start by understanding your all the physical obstacles, the environment that you are going to be entering into. So the first step in the first chapter is always going to be to make your estimates. So Sun Tzu said, war is a matter of vital importance to the state, the province of life or death, the road to survival or ruin. It is mandatory that it be thoroughly studied. Weapons are tools of ill omen. War is a grave matter. One is apprehensive lest men embark upon it with due reflection. So this is also a concept in excellence that as you move through something, you need to be able to reflect on the positives and negatives of this. Anytime you move into anything where you are gaining resource or impacting your own influence, you want to be able to reflect on that as you move forward, which is also partially a sensation and an intuition function working together. As you move forward, you are able to conceptualize more, add more understanding to conceptualizing what you need to do to reach your objectives. So therefore, appraise it in terms of the 5 fundamental factors and make comparison of the 7 elements later named so you may assess its essentials. All right, so what we see here is that Sun Tzu is using conceptually, he's going to be using 5 fundamental factors, so it isn't more intuitive. As I said, it does get broken down into more sensory data, but he is also using his extroverted thinking because he's actually putting a number on the factors that you are going to be paying attention to. So the first of these factors is moral influence. So generally, if you want to lead an army, if you want to lead a company, if you are looking to lead anyone, then you need to have some type of moral influence. If you cannot affect the emotions of people, then you cannot lead them. Especially if you are looking to do something greater than yourself, you do need people to follow behind you. The second is the weather. So you really want to understand the environments that you are going to be going into. In business, this can mean the common problems that you're going to deal with employees. In war, it means, are you going to be going into a storm, and is there going to be mud? Is there going to be snow? In landscaping, this actually made a lot of sense for me. It was pretty much the same thing. I had to know the exact conditions, the weather conditions that I would be walking into. So the third is terrain. Here you have a lot more. So what you're doing here is you're collecting a lot of sensory information. And then you're trying to figure out exactly what type of equipment or tools that you are going to need to navigate these. The fourth is command. So Sun Tzu realized that at some point you did need a leader. This leader needed to have moral influence in order to be in command and come to a point where people were going to follow him. So in order to have TE, which we consider a commander, you needed to have the FI part. So that's why TE and FI work together, if you look at it there. And the fifth is doctrine. And I've always had a problem with this, but in my own personal life, but it is something that's necessary. If you would like something that is going to be lasting, you need to be able to indoctrinate into that system. So what companies do is they create a mission statement that other people can get in with. And these mission statements are usually something conceptual that somebody can follow quite easily. So then Chang Yu, and that's how I pronounce it. I could be dead wrong in how this is pronounced. He's basically the one who would take the conceptualization and talk about it more practically. So the systematic order above is perfectly clear. When troops are raised to chastise transgressors, and temple council first considers the adequacy of the ruler's benevolence and confidence of their people. So people need to believe in their ruler. Next, the appropriateness of nature's season. And finally, the difficulties of topography. So when I tell you guys that life is long and things take a lot of time, is because I realize seasonally there's times when I cannot do something and there's times when you cannot do something. So if you understand that there are common patterns to when you can and cannot do something, or when something can be optimized or optimally done, then you are basically taking in you are making sure that you are acting appropriately to the seasons that will happen and the difficulties of any topography. So it's quite simple. It's like how I told you guys the other day. Right now, you can be preparing for winter, but you can't actually go do anything for winter. After thorough deliberation of these 3 matters, a general is appointed to launch the attack. After troops have crossed the borders, responsibility for laws and orders develops upon the general. So what they're actually doing here is they are, so you need your extroverted, as generals move and conquer some area, they begin to use their extroverted sensation to begin understanding the rules and the laws of the territory that they're conquering. And with that, they are beginning to adapt into that. I do think this is a process of extroverted sensation and introverted sensation. You need to be able to get the people that are already in the territory you're conquering on your side. You cannot do that through force. You need to get them to trust you. And this is actually any war that we've ever seen is kind of what we do. That's why special forces exist in guerrilla warfare. They go in and they make, I wouldn't say friends, but acquaintances with people in their locations, in the general location. And they're doing it in a very practical way. So now we can go to the next part. By moral influence, so we're going back to feelings, because now that you have a commander, that commander has moral influence. They can pull people into their, because they can respect people, other people can respect them, and they can teach people to understand their way of viewing the world. So by moral influence, I mean that which causes people to be in harmony with their leaders, so that they will accompany them in life and unto death without fear of mortal peril. When one treats, this was Cheng Yu again, when one treats people with benevolence, justice, and righteousness, and reposes confidence in them, the army will be united in mind, and all will be happy to serve their leaders. The Book of Changes says, in happiness, at overcoming difficulties, people forget the danger of death. This is actually one of the things that I've noticed is, like, especially in business, I could do this, is that, we would do really hard work, but you can make it rewarding for people. You can make it exciting for people. You can make people realize that they are overcoming challenges, and people really will ignore the negatives by doing this. I guess once you get a dopamine hit, people can actually ignore the negatives that they would normally kind of ponder over, or that may actually slow them down. Also, having multiple people that are feeling these same things kind of does help too. It keeps the influence, keeps moral influence. And when one person is excited or happy, more people can become excited or happy. I always get a little, like, when it gets into weather and terrain, I always get confused myself, because I do think it has a lot to do. Like, weather is only going to affect certain terrain. So that's where we're getting into right now. So I just want to let you know, like, I do stumble a little bit here. By weather, I mean the interaction of natural forces, the effects of winter's cold and summer heat, and the conduct of military operations in accordance with the seasons. So we already went over that, but at the same time, it's quite easy to see that you want to be able to predict common patterns that are going to be happening. So I would actually say this is a high extroverted intuition in general, but you would need to look at the empirical data of how things happen throughout the seasons in order to understand, like, hey, when should somebody plan an attack? When should you back off an attack? And then actually understand. So once extroverted intuition conceptualizes this, then it can be placed into an extroverted sensation function. So somebody using extroverted sensation would actually decide, okay, we have the tactics to use right now, or we cannot use these tactics right now. So how advanced pattern recognition and sensory information work together is quite obvious here. So we're getting into terrain now. So by terrain, I mean distances, whether the ground is traversed with ease or difficulty, whether it is open or constricted, and the chances of life or death. All right, so we're going to the practical here. When employing troops, it is essential to know beforehand the condition of the terrain. So a lot of this is knowing beforehand. How do you know beforehand? A lot of times spies get sent in. Somebody goes in to more subtly examine the terrain. So somebody is actually picking up these sensory data points, which will be moved towards to their leader. So when they express what the terrain actually is, the leader can begin conceptualizing what the logistics are and what types of tactics can be used. Knowing the distances, one can make use of an indirect or direct plan. If he knows the degree of ease or difficulty of traversing the ground, he can estimate the advantage of using infantry or cavalry. If he knows where the ground is constricted and where open, he can calculate the size of force appropriate. If he knows where he will give battle, he knows when to concentrate or divide his forces. So what he's saying is that by understanding all of the sensory factors that are going to be that are going to come up as obstacles, then you are going to be able to make better decisions. And what I like to say is, like, generally learn the rules of the game and then play the game. So you have to learn what the rules are. Basically, the rules are out of your control. You can't control when it rains. You can't control the time of year or anything like that. So you learn those rules and then you play to them. And that's all advanced pattern recognition, which can be integrated. So now we will move down to command, which is you actually put people into charge. By command, I mean the general's qualities of wisdom, sincerity, humanity, courage, and strictness. So you kind of see here how, a leader has to be all of these things, and it's not always so assertive. It is an ability to be compassionate towards others and have others listen to you and want to listen to you. These five, this is again more practical. This was Li Chuan. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. I can't pronounce these, I don't think, because they even have accent marks and things. But these five are the virtues of the general. Hence, the army refers to him as the respected one. If wise, a commander is able to recognize changing circumstances and to act expediently. If sincere, his men will have no doubt of the certainty of reward and punishment. If humane, he loves mankind, sympathizes with others, and appreciates the industry and toil. If courageous, he gains victory by seizing opportunity without hesitation. If strict, his troops are disciplined because they are in awe of him and afraid of punishment. Shen Pao Hu said, if a general is not courageous, he will be unable to conquer doubts or create great plans. Okay, and then this was the part where I get, in my own personal life, I've never fully understood indoctrination, which is what doctrine is. So by doctrine, I mean organization, control, assignment of appropriate ranks to officers, regulation of supply routes, and the provision of principal items used by the army. I guess in the war sense, it makes more sense because it is really just like, what are your tactics? Once you have the logistics, which is all your estimates, now you have to estimate what tactics can you actually use. This is a second part in excellence. And what he says is there's no general who has heard of these five matters, who has not heard of these five matters. Those who master them win. Those who do not are defeated. So what you're looking at is that somebody who is a general who needs to be effective also needs to understand people. He needs to be able to assign the appropriate ranks to officers. And you want to be able to trust the people that you assign any rank to. And you want to understand their own moral integrity and their own moral influence within others. Because what I have realized is somebody does not have moral influence. And a lot of times when I work with somebody with low FE or low FI, I often try to allow them to find a way to use that some way, especially if I want them in a leadership position, because they need to understand how they can influence others that way. a lot of time, and this actually is eventually, a high TE user can do this quite easily. And this is how you level up to like that sage point where people will just listen to you. They don't actually need you to force them to do something. They trust you enough to do it. They trust your opinion. They trust that you have done something enough, which is why I think anyone who basically puts enough effort can become the sage. I think sage and commander are very similar in the sense that people want their knowledge and they are willing to share their knowledge. So basically what they are talking about here, well, we'll get into the practical. If you say which ruler possesses moral influence, which commander is the more able, which army obtains the advantage of nature in the terrain, and which regulations and instructions are better carried out, which troops are the stronger, which has the best trained officer and men. So what another practical thing is, if officers are unaccustomed to rigorous drilling, they will be worried and hesitant in battle. If generals are not thoroughly trained, they will inwardly quail when they face the enemy. And when I tell you guys to commit to something, some type of discipline greater than yourself, and commit to it, this is why. It's because in battle, you are always, you don't know when battle will happen, and you always need to train yourself for any circumstances that can come up. If you want to lead one day, you need to be able to do this on your own. You cannot count on other people to do this. And then when you do become the leader or the sage, you can instill these virtues onto other people. But you need to be the person who does this within yourself. That's where I get back into self-discipline. Also back to moral influence. If you do these things, you do gain the moral influence. When people know that they can trust you, when people know that you do things the right way, you seek perfectionism, people do instill trust in you. And becoming these things are much easier to do. And being successful in them are also much easier to do. So we still have a couple more pages. In which administers rewards and punishments in a more enlightened manner. Neither should be excessive. So being able to rationally understand what is necessary is very important. If you behead somebody because they stole something, nobody is going to trust your moral influence. At the same time, if you do not instill punishment on people who do need punishment, nobody will trust that you will make the moves necessary to keep harmony, because most people, no matter if you are an FE user or not, do want harmony. We all have feelings that would prefer harmony. How we get there is more so based on our functions. I will be able to forecast which side will be victorious and which defeated. Basically, by understanding all of the logistics within your own army, the logistics with the battles, within the battles and the armies that you will be facing, you can guarantee yourself success. So what we're seeing here is that Sun Tzu is not talking about specific battles in these. I'm not going to keep going, actually, because I do think we've gone through a lot. But I do just kind of want to talk about the functions. So Sun Tzu is, as I said, known as the sage. And what I do think is very interesting is he doesn't need to talk about any specific battle, because conceptually he understands the natural ways that individuals process things that kind of that does translate into the way that groups perform, and how you can begin evaluating individuals within your circle circle of people that you interact with, to understand how you can use them resourcefully, and what you would need to do internally to allow them to want to do that for you. I do think that currently in the time we live, that you don't see so much of the interplay between the polarities. I do think that many people go to one-sidedness, and that when you actually do see somebody who is able to find the middle point of using both sides of their functions, understanding the sensory importance, the importance of conceptualizing, planning, that you actually see somebody who comes up and changes the perception of the way people are seeing the world and the way that they do things. When I talk about distributed cognition, I mean, when you put together something like this, people can change their thinking and their feelings completely to understand that there are different ways of interacting with the world. And that's basically what going to war is Sun Tzu in other chapters talks about, like, you win the war by not actually having to fight it. And if you can use all of your functions the right way, then you can develop that moral influence to be effective, or you can collect all of the data points that allow you to set up systems correctly, and all of the cognitive processes are necessary in order to do this. There is a hierarchy of moving information from one process to the other, and it's quite easy to see how you can set that up. So I do want to stop here, because I do think that I'm going in some of my other live streams, I'm going to keep going, but I do think that this got through the basics of sensing, feeling, thinking, and intuiting. Just so you guys know, I've never fully read through the book, like pinpointed things. I was doing speed reading the first 2 times I read it, just kind of picking up some things. Now I'm going through, and now that I understand generally what he was talking about, I'm going through and like finding the details. So I want to share that with you guys, but I don't want to overdo that myself, because he is getting more conceptual. I can tell he's getting more conceptual, because the sentences are actually getting shorter through this chapter, and there are more practical explanations of each one, which I think I may actually have to go through and write about and highlight before I go any deeper on this. But I do want to just let you guys know that he's even talking about temperaments in this, because I'm reading the word choleric when he's talking about authority. So he is talking about the temperaments of leaders and things like that, and how important it is to understand these things. And the reason I want to share this is because I think this is basically why I started a channel about typology, is because if you can understand cognitive processes and how information is metabolized, moved, how it gets distributed, and how understandings change, I think that generally more people can find ways to be productive, successful, happy, because these are talking on it as a grand scale. But if we think about the Dunbar number, we don't need to think about it as a grand scale. But if you can find 150 people and work towards some cause in this manner, you can end up successful in that cause, towards that cause, and you can end up the sage. You can be the person who knows all of these things beforehand, because I do think NI is just a function that can put itself into the position of all other functions without actually experiencing those functions. That's the way I've come to understand it. And I do think that that's just through understanding the objective reality that you are in, and understanding how you interpret that and what you need to do in order to continue moving through that. Anyways, that's all for today. I hope people like this, and I will catch you on the next episode. Thanks for watching.